When I first moved into Briarwood Estates, I thought I'd found the perfect place. Quiet streets, manicured lawns, neighbors who waved at each other. You know, the whole suburban dream. I was a contractor by trade, ran my own small construction business, and the best part? The house I bought came with a decent-sized driveway, room for both my pickup truck and my wife's car, or so I thought. The problems started 2 weeks after we moved in. I'd just finished a brutal week. Long hours, concrete dust in my lungs, and all I wanted was a quiet Friday night. But instead, I got a letter taped to my door. No stamp, no envelope, just a passive-aggressive flyer from the HOA. Your vehicle is in violation of community standards. Commercial vehicles are not to be parked in driveways overnight. This is your first warning. Fines will follow. I stared at it like it was written in another language. My truck? It's a Ford F-250. Nothing fancy. No logos, no ladders, no flashing lights. It wasn't even that big, just a bit taller than your average SUV. But apparently, in Briarwood Estates, anything with a hitch or a heavy-duty suspension counted as commercial. I laughed it off, assuming it was a mistake. The next day, I showed up to the HOA office with a coffee and a smile. "Hey, just wanted to clear something up. I got this warning about my truck." The woman behind the desk, some overly perfumed type with chunky glasses and a permanent frown, barely looked up. "That's correct. We've had complaints." "Complaints?" I asked. "From who? I haven't even met half the neighbors." She didn't blink. "It's not about personal complaints. It's about visual harmony." Visual harmony. That was the phrase she used, like my truck had committed a war crime against the landscaping. I asked if I could appeal it. She said I'd have to bring it up at the next monthly HOA meeting, which conveniently was 3 weeks away. In the meantime, the fine would start at $100 and go up by $25 every day. The offending vehicle remained visible. I left that office boiling. I tried parking it on the street, but that just earned me a ticket from the city for blocking the curb. Then I tried squeezing it into the garage, but between the shelves and the tools, it barely fit. Plus, I used it daily. Unloading it every night wasn't realistic, so the fines started piling up. By day 10, I owed them nearly $400, and that's when I started getting notes from one of the neighbors, not anonymous anymore, typed letters, taped to my mailbox. "Some of us work hard to keep this neighborhood classy. Why don't you park that thing somewhere people can't see it?" The notes always came at night. No signature, but the wording, it always sounded the same, like it came from the same bored, bitter person who thought visual harmony was a moral code. I started paying attention, watching the street, and sure enough, 3 doors down, there she was, Carol, HOA board member, floral blouses, perfect hedges, the type of woman who scowled if a child rode a scooter too fast past her lawn. One morning I caught her snapping a photo of my truck from across the street. She didn't even flinch when I waved. That's when I realized this wasn't just about rules. This was personal. Carol had decided I didn't fit her version of Briarwood, and she was going to use every rule in the book to push me out. I'd worked my whole life to afford this place, put everything I had into this house. I wasn't about to get bullied into hiding the tools that put food on my table. So I went to the next HOA meeting, showed up early, wore a button-down, brought photos, a printout of the vehicle code, and even examples of other trucks parked around the neighborhood. They barely let me speak. Carol sat at the head of the table like a queen on her throne. When I pointed out the inconsistencies in the HOA rules, she just smiled and said, "The board reserves the right to interpret vehicle classifications at its discretion." In other words, I was wasting my breath. That night, as I looked out at my truck, sitting harmlessly in my own driveway, a new kind of fire lit in my chest. Not anger, not fear. Strategy. I pulled up the county zoning maps, spent the whole weekend digging through local ordinances, property records, development plans, and that's when I saw it. The narrow, undeveloped lot right next to mine, a strip of land no more than 40 feet wide, ugly, overgrown, useless, but zoned for residential accessory use. My hands started to shake, not from nerves, but from pure adrenaline. I had an idea, a crazy one, but legal. If Carol wanted to play HOA chess, fine. She was about to find out I knew how to play a long game. The empty lot next to mine had always been an eyesore, a patch of overgrown weeds, uneven gravel, and a few stubborn shrubs that looked like they hadn't been watered since the Clinton administration. Nobody ever mentioned it, probably because it technically didn't belong to the HOA. It was private land, just sitting there, ignored and unwanted. But to me, that lot had suddenly become a golden opportunity. I drove down to the county clerk's office that Monday morning. The plot was owned by an elderly couple who'd moved to Florida 10 years ago. Their address was still listed in the records. After a few hours of digging and one call to a very surprised retiree, I had an agreement in place. Apparently they'd inherited the lot from a family member and didn't even realize it was still in their name. I offered them $7,000, a bit above the assessed value, just to sweeten the deal. They took it without hesitation. 30 days later, the paperwork was finalized. Just like that, I owned the lot next door. No HOA restrictions, no board oversight, just a clean deed and a world of possibilities. The kicker? Not a single soul in the neighborhood noticed. Everyone assumed the lot still belonged to the mysterious original owner, even Carol. But I wasn't ready to move my truck just yet. No, I wanted to make this permanent, undeniable, and bulletproof. So I called up a local contractor buddy of mine, laid out the vision, and started the permit process. I was going to build a private, legally zoned parking area right next to my house, complete with a gate, motion-activated lights, and, just for good measure, a decorative privacy fence tall enough to block Carol's entire front window view. I kept it low-key for the first few weeks. Surveyors came and went, concrete was poured, gravel compacted, permits posted. Carol didn't say a word, though I caught her walking her tiny white dog past the site every single morning, glancing at the workers like she was trying to read blueprints through sheer willpower. Then, one day, as the crew was finishing the final gravel grading, Carol stopped me on the sidewalk. She had that signature smile on her face, polite but poisoned. "Interesting little project you've got going there," she said. "Building something?" I shrugged. "Just improving the lot." "Strange. I thought that land wasn't buildable." I gave her the most innocent smile I could muster. "Oh, it's not. That's the beauty of it. I'm not building anything, just making it functional." She narrowed her eyes. "Functional for what?" "You'll see." I could tell it was killing her not knowing. A week later, the final inspection passed. I installed the security lights and cameras. Then, without any ceremony, I moved my truck from my driveway into my brand-new HOA-free parking zone, right on the edge of my property. Close enough to be convenient, but far enough to be completely out of the HOA's jurisdiction. You should have seen the low okay on Carol's face when she walked her dog by the next morning. She stopped, stared, took out her phone, and started taking pictures like she was cataloging a crime scene. That afternoon, I got an email from the HOA. "We've received complaints regarding a new structure and the continued presence of a commercial vehicle. Please attend the next board meeting." I didn't reply. At the meeting, I walked in holding a folder full of legal documents, land ownership, zoning maps, city permits, and photographic evidence. Carol opened the discussion with her usual smug tone. "We've had reports of a resident attempting to circumvent community standards by misusing a non-residential plot." I stood up, opened the folder, and began to lay out my case. "First off," I said, "the lot is now residential adjacent land, privately owned, fully permitted, and not part of this HOA. I have the deed, the permits, and the legal right to use it however I see fit." A few board members looked surprised. Carol did not. "You can't just create a private parking lot in a residential neighborhood," she snapped. I smiled. "Actually, I can. As long as it's not a commercial business and it meets city code, which it does. I even invited the county inspector to verify it. Here's his signature." She tried to pivot, "But it affects the look and feel of the community. It's behind a privacy fence, surrounded by landscaping, and technically not visible from the street. It's cleaner than half the driveways in this neighborhood." Dead silence. I could hear the HVAC unit buzzing in the ceiling. Carol leaned back, lips pursed so tight they nearly disappeared, and then I added the final touch. "Oh, and by the way, since the lot borders the community's eastern walking trail, I've decided to donate a portion of it for a public bench and native plant garden for the neighborhood. I'm calling it the Harmony Corner." A few gasps from the crowd. One board member even nodded in approval. "Carol, She looked like someone had force-fed her a lemon. The motion to fine me was dropped. The parking restrictions remained, but only on HOA-governed lots. And mine, as I reminded them, wasn't one of them anymore. As I walked out of that meeting, I passed Carol in the hallway. She muttered, "This isn't over." I didn't look back. "No," I said. "It's just getting started." If Carol's ego had taken a hit during that last HOA meeting, she sure didn't show it. Not in public, anyway. She still strutted around the neighborhood with her clipboard and her smug little smile like nothing had happened, but I could feel it in the air. The power shift. That lot next door, once a patch of forgotten dirt, was now a daily reminder that she couldn't control everything, especially not me. For a few weeks, things were quiet, peaceful, even. I parked my truck behind the privacy fence every night. The motion lights worked perfectly, and the little bench I installed on the corner, a hit with the neighborhood walkers. Even old Mr. Henderson from 3 streets over started stopping by in the evenings just to sit and wave at passing cars. But I knew Carol. She didn't like losing, and she definitely didn't like being outmaneuvered. So it wasn't much of a surprise when I got a letter in the mail. This time, not from the HOA directly, but from the Briarwood Aesthetic Review Committee. Never heard of them? Yeah, me neither. Apparently the committee had been newly formed to maintain visual standards along shared borders of the HOA, which just so happened to include my fence and the corner of my lot that touched the neighborhood trail. The letter stated that my fence's paint color clashed with the community's established palette, and that the lighting I'd installed caused unnecessary brightness visible from the street at night. They weren't fining me, not yet, just strongly urging me to make changes. Classic Carol. I ignored it. A week later, another letter came, this time citing a supposed environmental concern related to gravel runoff onto the walking path. It was ridiculous. I had edging installed, drainage was handled professionally, and the city inspection had cleared it weeks ago. But now they were trying to nitpick the details, hoping I'd make a mistake they could pounce on. Then came the flyers, typed up, printed on glossy paper, slipped into every mailbox. Concerned about the new parking lot in your neighborhood? Attend the special HOA session this Thursday. The flyer didn't mention me by name, but everyone knew who it was about. I showed up to that special session not because I had to, but because I wanted to. If they were going to drag my name through the mud, I wasn't about to give them the satisfaction of doing it behind closed doors. The room was packed. Way more than a usual HOA meeting. Carol stood at the front like she was running a campaign rally, complete with a slideshow, photos of my lot, close-ups of gravel, arrows and red circles like she was investigating a crime scene. "We're here," she said, "because a private development has been placed next to our community that compromises our shared values and endangers our aesthetics." I almost laughed. Endangers our aesthetics? Was she serious? I raised my hand. Carol ignored me, so I stood up. "Hi everyone, I'm Jason. I live on Willow Court. You probably know me as the guy with the truck." A few chuckles. Some heads nodded. I bought that lot legally. I followed every code, filed every permit, and invited every inspection. What you're seeing on these slides isn't an eyesore. It's a solution. I made space for my work vehicle, added a public bench, and cleaned up a patch of land that nobody else wanted. I pointed at the screen. "That gravel? It's not in anyone's way. Those lights? Motion activated? Shielded, and within city brightness limits. That fence? Neutral color, same height as half the privacy fences in the neighborhood." Carol's face was flushed now, but she forced a smile. "This isn't personal, Mr. Taylor. We're simply protecting property values." I raised an eyebrow. "Funny, because I just had my house appraised. It's gone up, partially because of the improvements I've made. And you know what? So have the comps around me." Someone in the crowd spoke up. "I actually like the new bench. My grandkids use the trail now." Another voice chimed in. "Better than that empty lot full of snakes." Carol tried to regain control, but it was slipping. The meeting ended without any vote or ruling, just a lot of murmurs, most of them no longer in her favor. But she wasn't done. A few days later, I got a visit from a county official, apparently responding to a citizen complaint about potential unlicensed business activity on the lot. I invited him in, showed him the truck. No logos, no signage, just a personal vehicle. I even offered him a soda while he reviewed my papers. He left shaking his head. "You're good," he said. "I'm not sure who's gunning for you, but they're wasting their time." Still, the pressure was building. Carol had moved from HOA threats to local red tape. She was running out of levers to pull, but I could feel her getting desperate, and that's when I got the idea. If she wanted to play politics, fine, I'd play too, but I wouldn't just win this little battle. I'd change the rules of the game entirely. By now, the whole neighborhood had taken sides, and for once, I wasn't the one wearing the target. Carol's campaign to paint me as the enemy had backfired. People started to talk, quietly at first, then openly, about her tactics, her sudden new committees, her habit of twisting HOA rules to settle personal scores. But I wasn't satisfied with just surviving her attacks. I wanted to make sure no one else would have to deal with them again. So I got organized. I started small, casual conversations with neighbors during dog walks or while checking the mail. "Hey, did you hear about that special committee Carol made up? Did you know she's the one who pushed the ban on basketball hoops? Said they were unsightly. I looked into the bylaws. Did you know we can vote out board members if we get enough signatures? Turns out a lot of people had stories, little frustrations, fines over mailbox colors, threats about lawn length, citations for flower pots that didn't match the community aesthetic. Carol had ruled with a clipboard and a glare for years. Most people just put up with it, until now. I filed a formal petition to recall the HOA board president, Carol, under our own community charter. All it needed was 25% of homeowner signatures to trigger a special election. It took me less than 2 weeks. By then, I was practically running an unofficial resistance committee. I printed flyers listing real HOA abuses under Carol's leadership. I posted before and after photos of the lot I'd improved. I even created a simple website showing what residents could legally do with their property. Most of it stuff Carol had always discouraged, but had no authority to stop. When Carol saw the petition signatures roll in, she panicked. Suddenly she was knocking on doors, not with warnings, but with cookies and apologies. She hosted a community picnic for the first time in years. She even offered to review and update the bylaws for modern standards. It was too late. The vote was held the following month. It wasn't even close. Carol was out. And guess who was nominated to take her place on the board? Not me. I declined. I didn't want the job, but I supported someone better. A neighbor named Denise, a retired school principal who had lived here for 15 years and believed in fairness over favoritism. He won with overwhelming support. One of her first acts as HOA president, dismantled the bogus Aesthetic Review Committee. She also rolled back 6 rules that had been weaponized under Carol's term, including a clearer definition of commercial vehicle that protected people like me. The cherry on top, Denise and I worked together to file an official amendment to the HOA bylaws, a clause stating that adjacent non-HOA properties with residential zoning shall not be subject to HOA review or discipline. It passed unanimously, which meant my lot, and anyone else who wanted to use theirs creatively, was fully protected from HOA interference. Carol still lives here, though she's rarely seen. No more morning walks, no more clipboard patrols. Her influence is gone, and so is her power to make people feel small over petty rules. As for me, I still park my truck on that gravel lot every night. The motion lights come on with a soft click. The privacy fence is now lined with potted plants and a few solar lanterns. And the bench on the corner? It's got a small plaque now, donated by the neighbors. Harmony Corner. Proof that doing things the right way still matters. Sometimes I sit there in the evenings, watching the sun dip behind the rooftops, sipping coffee from a travel mug still dusty from the day's work. And every time I see someone walk by, smiling, waving, nodding in approval, I'm reminded I didn't just protect my truck. I reclaimed my space. I rewrote the rules, and I gave my neighborhood its spine back, legally, cleverly, and completely by the book.